Is it over? Did JJK end? Let me check Twitter. Oh, God. You know, I knew Gege Akutami's original outline for JJK to end before 2024 was believable maybe a year ago, but the way the story's going now, despite its breakneck pacing, I'm honestly debating if it'll even come to an end at all in 2024. Think about how much left we have to see. Not like Gege shows us every domain expansion, every technique. As a matter of fact, almost no characters at all get any kind of satisfactory end with a nice concluding bow on top. But honestly, tell yourself, will the series be complete if we don't get things like Yuji finding out about his mother, Kenjaku or Sukuna betraying the other, Kenjaku versus Yuta? Oh. Well, at least give us a single goddamn mention of Nobara ever again. Like, seriously? It's been 3 years. Does JJK suck, you guys? That's a different video. With so much content left to find context in, I just couldn't wait for the series to end to keep digging for clues. What mysteries still lurk in the prefectures of Japan, deep within its many barriers? I'm your host, Jallomoth, and today we'll once again find out. You can trust me. As the curator of all things curious, I'm a known reliable source. I'm Mothra's strongest Cho soldier, the general Dagon Gagger of the Yorozu clan, Tengen's chosen Yuki defender, and ruthless slayer of any Noya apologists. But I worry about this stuff so you don't have to, even though I'm sure you do. You're in for a treat tonight, folks. With over 50 entries taking up 38 pages of script, but I have like 10 special guests here today to help me crack this cat. So why don't you just sit down, relax, have some dark chocolate and ice water, and watch this little pink moth in your computer box descend deep into hell. I mean, the Jujutsu Kaisen Iceberg, Volume 3. Takaba's partner. Much like the manga at the time of scripting this video, Fumihiko Takaba is gonna steal the spotlight for a little bit. A recurring theme throughout Jujutsu Kaisen seems to be pairs. We've got twins all over, a set of special eyes, yin and yang, and I guess Takaba and a partner. Takaba seems to have a destined way of performing, and that's in a duo. He's simply more funny and therefore more powerful when he's playing off of someone else, probably someone more deadpan. We've seen him work with a few comedians in the past. We even got a brief flashback of Fumihiko and one of his actual routine partners. They argue about their set and about Takaba's vision and how he doesn't really feel matched in his element. Then, we see Takaba out of his depth when he challenges Kenjaku and they become dueling partners. At first, Takaba feels outmatched. Is this freak actually funnier than me, he thinks? But a new partner comes in to deliver the punchline. Takaba really is the perfect setup man. Gege really seems to like Takaba, so it's looking like he's not going anywhere anytime soon. Although his favorite character was Nanami, so take that with a grain of salt. Knowing Gege's strange and sometimes downright evil foreshadowing, I don't want to leave any stone unturned. Is there any importance to Takaba being half of a two-man act? Well, a pretty sizable margin of the community seemed to think so, me ever increasingly becoming one of them. I wasn't one of the radicals who thought that this was some kind of foreshadowing for him and Kenjaku teaming up somehow, and thankfully that didn't happen. But what I do think maybe this all is a sign that Takaba cannot be truly funny in a battle without someone to play off of. Be it Yuta or Maki, I think someone serious needs to be present for Takaba to springboard his silliness off of, making him seem funnier by proxy in some kind of weird binding vow, if you could call it that. Like a really stupid version of overtime. If we take a look at this original clue we got though, the original hint that Takaba is incomplete, it makes note that Takaba used to work with a partner. Perhaps this could be trying to echo Gojo, Sukuna, and Kenjaku's plotlines. What I mean is maybe Takaba needs to be selfish, to cast away his partners and be greedy, hog the stage, get every laugh for himself. And when he does, his interpretation could carry him all the way to the likes of the big three. I kind of doubt it, but hey, it would be funny. References galore. Akutami adores media. I think most authors do, but Gege is in absolutely no way shy of wearing their influences right on their sleeve. The last 2 videos, I've been trying to fight the urge to make an entry every single time Gege makes a reference to something, so this is my answer. I'll rapid fire a ton of them all in this one big entry. Back in Volume 1, we talked about how Noya's cursed form is an allusion to Digimon, something Gege has referenced much less slyly in the past. Bouncing off of that, let's start with anime references. In chapter 197, Daido, in a frantic search for a katana, finds a plastic toy sword from Demon Slayer. Hikari's head is, according to him, full of manga, right after he got the upper hand on Kashimo by throwing him into the ocean. The same tactic pulled by Josuke on Red Hot Chili Pepper in JoJo's Part 4. His girlfriend Kirara has to mark people with a star, and her CT Love Rendezvous is a music reference, something very common in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Also, Toto is like a walking JoJo's reference, with a little Baki in there too. We've seen Pochita twice now, both in the manga and in the anime. Kokichi Muta Evangelions all over Mahito, and Kenjaku's merger is kind of the human instrumentality project. Gojo and Toji both wear the hardest fit of all time simply because Gojo likes Hunter x Hunter. Also, Charles just straight up quotes D. Gray Man at Hikari. This reaction shot of Kenjaku is from Dragon Ball. Basically everything about Takaba is a reference, from his outfits to his attacks, but it doesn't stop there, not even close. Look at this.
I'm sorry! Welcome! Welcome! Wilson! 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 Lo siento, Wilson!
Hikari runs a fight club where the first rule is to stay quiet about the fight club. Choso vs Yuji's whole fight is just the raid 2. Go check out my video on that to hear more if you're curious. Unless it's not up because YouTube copyrighted it for a 4th time. Maki goes Kill Bill mode all over these crazy 88 dudes, Beatrix style. Mahito is just straight up Frankenstein. And so is Yuji, also. I'm you. Dagon is Dagon from Lovecraft. Higuruma bathing fully clothed on stage is probably a reference to Shakespeare's Hamlet, which starts a similar way. Even that one guy who roasted the shit out of Takaba the first time we saw him. Yeah, remember him? He's an actual Japanese comedian in real life, Kendo Kobayashi. Believe it or not, he's interviewed Gege before, and many of us have seen this famous image without even realizing that Gege turned this dude into a full-fledged character. I could honestly keep going for like 10 more minutes. I didn't even mention any of the Season 1 stuff, like Jennifer Lawrence, Sebastian Stan, Super Smash Bros., The Hobbit. Gojo even references JJK itself.
ヒロインがムカつくんだけど最後派手に死ぬの。
Would you believe me if I said even this, something as massive as the biggest death in modern anime history, could all just be one big reference? I'm not kidding, but you'll have to stay all the way to Tier 5 to hear about that one. Previous vessels. Not knowing the inner mechanisms of the magic system in JJK is par for the course at this point, but something we're really left in the dark on is vessels. We know kinda how they work. Kenjaku turns you into some kind of cursed object and forces some nobody to eat it so they can bring you back, overriding the rando's body. But something interesting to note is that it's been stated before that when a reincarnated sorcerer wakes up in their new body, they keep all their host's memories. This leads to many questions about our characters who aren't in their OG bod. Our two main men of interest regarding these questions are definitely Kashimo and Choso. Now there are many other characters that are or may be incarnated, but they're all so mysterious that we'll surely never discover who they were before. So let's focus on the two we've definitely seen the most of, starting with Kashimo. I'm honestly really shocked we found nothing out about Kashimo's vessel before his death. I was one of the people who assumed his vessel was eventually going to be revealed as Yuko Ozawa, retroactively making her interaction with our main cast more important, and giving Yuji another thing to be distraught over. But that doesn't seem to be the case. And for now, we can just leave Ozawa over here with our other unfinished plot points like Nobara's friend Sayori. Kashimo seemingly isn't affected at all by 2 decades of human experience constantly just sitting in his brain. Same with Choso, which really shocks me. I mean, really, think about it. Choso's memories include 150 years of sitting in a jar as a fetus, and then 20-some years of probably pretty normal and happy memories from whoever this hunk is that Kenjaku body robbed. We actually see the guy his little brother Kechizu incarnates into back in Season 1, although he does change quite a bit. A common misconception is that this is Choso's vessel, but if you look close at the cursed object that he eats, you'll see that it's Kechizu and not Choso. To be honest, I really just wanted more dialogue about those strange lost memories. Do you think Choso feels any love for the family his host had? He's a very loving person when it comes to his relatives, and this kind of makes me think that Kenjaku may have somehow altered his mind during his revival. Yeah, poor Choso here probably got lobotomized. Remember that for later, but right now, let's just move on. No hands. Something undoubtedly present in Jujutsu Kaisen is the struggle to be first. The first stint of 5 consecutive black flashes, the first 0.2 second domain expansion. There are all kinds of records to be shattered and abilities to be attained. We could spend all day talking about legends that could hypothetically be surpassed. Sure hit domains, maximum techniques, etc. But no character, bar maybe Sukuna, has actually reached anywhere near their full potential. But there's one thing even Sukuna can't do, and it's something I want more than anything to see. A domain expansion with no hands. As we know, the more steps you take when using your technique, like chanting, singing, dancing, and doing hand signs, the stronger your abilities are and the easier they are to cast. But on the opposite end of that spectrum, you can still be strong. Gojo, for instance, is so unbelievably good at manipulating cursed energy that he is presumably the only person who can open a domain with a single hand. We haven't even seen Sukuna do that. Call me crazy, but I think a no-handed domain expansion is something that's going to happen. By who? I couldn't say. If you want my guess, Yuji, because of this. Dude is so cold he doesn't even need to throw it up. Some runners-up, though, would be Yuta, or even Todo, since he's kinda got no choice. Same with Toge, but fuck out of here. Maharaga's Fate. This entry is just that. What happened to this big creepy beast? The last time we saw it, Gojo incinerated the thing, down to the wheel. It's gone. This is significant. The last time Maharaga was killed, the wheel remained fine and then returned to the 10 Shadows. That's kind of the whole entry. I guess this thing's fate in this series was questionable to begin with because, we're not even close to finding out if Megumi's gonna come back, so best to just cross this bridge when we get there. Hidden messages. Something you may not know is that a lot of animators like to talk about what they do online. At least, what they're allowed to tell us. But just last week, as of writing this, animator Benjamin Foire revealed that in the impact frames during Mahito's Black Flash, the words Black Flash are spelled out in the dark sparks. The day prior, animator Mephisto showcased in that same episode his hidden message. The words "I will exercise you" carved into these worm-like transfigured humans. I like to think both of these examples are Mahito using his idol transfiguration to painstakingly change these objects, or maybe even it's like a passive thing that his technique just does automatically. Not that it has to be anything but a quirk in the animation, I just find it funny that the only instance of this in JJK is from the one guy that probably could do this just for fun and would. Neither of these unfortunately have anything on Smokin' on Dat Big Mom pack hidden in One Piece. Blessed Souls. This idea comes from LolKUOK of the Jallo Plaza server over on Discord. He's also a patron, so thanks man. So we all know things in JJK are subject to change. Direct change, sometimes in the most opposite way possible. Yin Yang. Come on, there's an ability called Reversal where you just use the opposite of your own powers. So at first, it just seems like a logical step that blessed spirits made of positive energy would exist, the opposite of curses. But we've never seen one. The closest we've got is Angel. But this is kind of hard to tell because we've never really seen Angel, we just see Hana, the vessel she's stuck in. Are Angel and the rest of her group that she calls God blessed spirits? Is Sukuna a blessed spirit who turned? This would basically make him Satan, a fallen angel. Where LolKUOK comes in is by bringing something up into the equation that I and most other people forgot about. Vengeful spirits. A vengeful spirit is when a sorcerer dies full of emotion and unfinished business, specifically by a weapon with no cursed energy. How specific? There's no way we're ever going to get somebody super kind and even blessed to die on screen with an attack using no cursed energy, right? That would be like 1 in a million. This theory is basically that Riko became an angel upon her death to Toji. Not only this, but because of her connection to sorcery, being a star plasma vessel, she could be the reverse in a way of a vengeful spirit, a benevolent one. But if so, why would she never show herself? Probably because it's way nicer wherever she is than down here. Maybe she was the one who shone the heavenly light upon Gojo when he became enlightened. He was even apologizing to her ghost when this happened. It's kind of believable. Space bending. This is one of those entries that, more than anything, is just an observation, a curious connection of dots that tickles that part of your brain and makes it feel like Sukuna just woke you up in bed. Speaking of him, that evil creature just got a pretty unbeatable ability. To kill Gojo, Sukuna slashed not him, not infinity, not the air, but space itself. Everything was null and void because it actually split through the fabric of reality itself. This is really, really bad for our main cast. If only there was a curse technique that allowed you to bend the fabric of space, and if only it was in the hands of the strongest sorcerer of the modern age. Okay, sidebar. I'm obviously talking about Yuta, who has Uro's space manipulation ability. This is kind of a weird clue hinting that Yuta versus Sukuna is something we'll probably get to see, which would be cool. My real question is that now Gojo's gone, is Yuta seriously the strongest sorcerer? Especially with Kashimo out of the picture, I guess it really is him. Could be Hikari or Maki too, I guess it's supposed to be vague. Which of these three do you think is the strongest sorcerer of the modern age?
The Kamo clan's second technique. Have you ever noticed that blood manipulation feels underwhelming when compared to the other inherited techniques? Like, it's not bad in a vacuum, but when you compare it to the likes of the 10 Shadows technique or Limitless technique, it just doesn't really keep up. Not only is it less powerful than those two, it's also one of the only techniques that has a drawback when it's used. Well, that's because blood manipulation is not supposed to be compared to those two techniques, because the Kamo clan actually has a second inherited technique. It makes sense when you think about it. All three clans are supposed to be on equal footing, but the Kamo clan is the only one with a single inherited technique. The Zenin clan has the coveted 10 Shadows technique, but it also has projection sorcery. The Gojo clan has Limitless, and it also has the 6 Eyes. While the 6 Eyes aren't technically a technique, they do get passed from generation to generation within the Gojo clan. This has led me to believe that the Kamo clan actually has a second inherited trait. Maybe it's a technique that's on par with the 10 Shadows or Limitless techniques, or maybe it's an attribute like the 6 Eyes that makes blood manipulation much more powerful than what we see. This would raise the question of why no one in Jujutsu Society seems to know about this second technique, and the reason could be that the other user just never died, and therefore the technique could never be inherited. Or maybe not, I don't know, I'm not Gege.
Green. So everybody loves to make Gojo's technique sound really complicated, but at the end of the day, what we've got is red and blue, push and pull. But is there anything else? A secret third thing? Well, yeah, purple. But purple is a combination of red and blue. What this theory means is an entirely different color, something entirely separate from red and blue. And while I do think people focus too much on the color and not what's, happening on page or on the screen, but some theories actually do make some sense. Pull up all the stupid ass lime green memes, please. The first idea being, Gojo has red and blue, so what he really needs is yellow, the third and final primary color. If Gojo unlocked it, it would grant him access to the entire prismatic color system. With these 3 colors, he could throw out any hue there is, except for cyan and magenta, but don't worry about that. Take a graphic design class. What would yellow even do though? Maybe shoot blessed energy, similar to Yuta's love beam? Because while red is the reversal of blue, he's not using reverse cursed energy in red, I don't think. I'm not really sure if this has been stated, but I think red is simply Gojo applying his cursed energy in a different way. He might need to use blessed energy to do it, but I don't think red is just entirely made of positive energy. Now, I could be wrong on that, but maybe that's what Gojo's secret third thing would do. I think the reason Gege didn't do this idea is because when you mix all the colors together, it isn't pretty, and Gege probably doesn't want his maximum technique to be brown. God, Gojo throwing around yellows and browns. Also, Gojo is maybe the gayest character in all of JJK, and giving the dude the unbridled power of the entire rainbow may simply be too much power for one man. But seriously, I think we need to stop looking at these as colors and start thinking of them as light. When you mix all colors of light, you don't get brown, you get white. On JJK Volume 4's cover, we see this, Gojo controlling some strange white light. To jump around a bit, when Takaba and Kenjaku are on Family Feud or whatever the fuck is happening, what is this manga? Kenjaku gets asked a physics question. He correctly responds with the answer Hadron, but it's unfortunately after the buzzer. Now, I'm not going to pretend to understand physics like some people on Twitter or Gege Akutami do, but a lot of people say that this is somehow evidence of Gojo's cope-fueled return. According to Twitter, hadrons are made up of 3 color states, red, blue, and green. No way. Is lime green real? I tried fact-checking this and got kind of mixed results. For instance, red, green, and blue are color values, or states in quantum chromodynamics, whatever that is, but there's also anti-red, anti-blue, and anti-green. Not only that, but these colors are sort of imaginary. They're really just labels, and this has nothing to do with color in the traditional sense. Now at first I was like, oh well there you go, theory's over. But Gojo has called his own technique imaginary before. In a hadron, the 3 quarks are locked in subatomic alignment, creating white at their center. I would have moved on a while ago and stopped saying all this physics jargon if there wasn't some actual evidence to go along with this, mainly this scene in JJK Season 2, added just for the anime. Gojo is demonstrating his powers while simply spinning around a pencil. We see blue, red, and we briefly see this almost green-blue color, and even white itself, clear as day. Is this something Gege added into the anime specifically to tease Gojo's abilities now that he knew what they'd be? In this pretty recent mandala illustration, at its center are 4 prison realms: red, blue, purple, and green. While Gojo had nothing but time to kill in the prison realm, did he unlock green or even white? If so, and he's pulling a Choso and faking his death against Sukuna, all waiting for the perfect moment to white him, I don't know how I'd feel. First of all, this looks pretty real to me, but like Gojo said to Toji,
you should have gone for the head.
I know I ask you guys all the time, but seriously, what do you think about this? You can leave a comment or chat in the JJK channel in my Discord server about it, which will be down in the description below as always. Is it Gojo over? Do we even want Gojo to return? And if he did, should he really be channeling the power of the rainbow and throwing out imaginary colorless techniques, or just be himself? I say let the strongest just be Satoru Gojo, let the man rest. And if you do bring him back, nerf him. Takaba is real. We already know Takaba's a real one, but what this entry actually is a reference to the final page of chapter 210. All in all, it's a pretty dark and serious chapter. Orphaned kids being fed slop by a grotesque monster in the woods, American soldiers being used by giant curses as bait for slightly less giant curses, all kinds of biblical references, the only mention of Kugisaki in 100 chapters, and then this is the final page. I know this is like the whole point of the entry, but I don't even want to get started on what the implication that Takaba knows he's in a manga means. Was he just compelled to say this by the goofy gods, the silly geese up in the sky, or does he really just know? How are they going to do this in the anime, by the way? Maybe he'll say, I'm the last shot, or the last scene is mine. What I hope happens, though, is that they finally bring back Juju Strolls, just once, in this one episode, for him. Please. Actually, that's not enough. Make Juju Stroll Takaba's domain expansion. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Imagine this, you'd have to play a part in the scene, and depending on how you do, you'll be nerfed to some degree. Maybe then we'd finally get to see what Formation A was.
Formation B! Roger that!
This incredibly long video is only possible to make because I know you goobers will flock to it, so thank you for supporting this, especially my lovely patrons. My patrons know more about my videos and when they're coming out and what's coming next than anyone else. If that's something you're interested in, the link will be down in the description for you to go check it out. The bigger this channel gets and the more populated the Patreon becomes, the more I'll be able to do over there too, so I've got some big ideas for exclusive stuff. And while you're down there, right next to my Patreon link is the link to my Discord server. Come say hi. Everyone's probably just munching in there, but they don't bite. Yeah, I love my fans, what can I say? But come on, let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right down into Tier 2. Yuji's Domain. Yuji really is something special in the world of sorcery. In the current manga, he's truly one of a kind. He has traits of heavenly restriction, but can still use cursed energy. He lands black flashes all day like it's nothing, and is incredibly adaptable. This is one of those entries where it isn't some crazy conspiracy, just some fun theorizing. If Yuji develops a domain of his own, which based on his skill with cursed energy is not something I'd put past him, what would it be? You already know it's going to be named something badass like Twin Rivers of Tiger's Blood or something insane like that, but in terms of the domain's actual traits, what are some things we could extrapolate about how it would work? Because really, domains are a manifestation of your soul and body. Every domain we've seen is intrinsic to the character it's attached to. And now that Yuji apparently has a technique, it should be possible for him to imbue that into a barrier. I talked about this in my analysis of Red Scale, but I'd prefer if Yuji's domain was just like a rope of cursed energy around his waist, connecting him to his target. A hell of a lot of people think it could be a boxing ring with imposed rules, but Yuji is a tiger, it's something primal, it should be more animalistic. Yuji's also super durable, so some sort of physical buff like Akari's domain could be a fitting thing for him. As for what it would look like, I really have no idea. It could be a giant machine, have something to do with cogs. Another popular idea would be Benevolent Shrine, the antithesis of Sukuna's domain. This is cool on like a yin-yang balance kind of metatextual level, but does anybody else really think that it's kinda lame? I mean, if they are twins somehow, then sure, but we already did that theory. I'd like to spend my time talking about more mysterious stuff, so I'll move on, but I really am intrigued by the idea of Yuji's domain. I think if he does get one, it will 1000% have already been hinted to in the existing story. That's kind of why this entry is here. The Shrine's Offering. The Shrine's Offering is an idea I heard from user either_0. They pointed out that in the one brief time that we've seen the Heian era in which Sukuna ruled, he was looked up to as like a cruel deity. People did rituals for him, sacrifices, and who knows what else. They treated him as a malevolent god. That's why his domain is a shrine. In some shrines or religious places, offerings were put in a communal box. Could be money or any number of things. Perhaps Sukuna spared powerful clans by forcing them to make binding vows with him. If they put an insanely powerful cursed tool in his treasure box, he'd let them live. Do you see? It's the black box. This thing will never not be the most mysterious thing in JJK. Of all the black box theories I've heard, this one sorta takes the cake. It explains it completely separately from his technique while working with everything that we know so far. It seems pretty plausible. Megumi's return. This right here might be the most immaculate theory I've ever heard. It's so bulletproof I'd stand behind it any day of the week, and really, it's simple. Megumi Fushiguro will come back, because without him, Gege is out of reasons to draw Toji. Alright, had to throw in one joke entry, come on, every iceberg's got a few. But truthfully, I don't think Megumi's return is possible, it's plausible. But this evidence isn't as concrete as I wish. You already know realized Maki is going to get into another fight, and when she does, half the damn panels are going to be plastered with that deadbeat. I hope not. Just give the girl her own moment once, please.
The Immortal Star. In the series of Jujutsu Kaisen, Tengen is one of the most important and vital characters in the series. In simple terms, you can think of Lord Tengen as an immortal sage that optimizes the cursed energy in Japan using her barrier technique. However, what makes Tengen so special? Well, to answer that, we have to go all the way back to the known history of Jujutsu in the series to even get an idea of what role that Tengen played. Over 1200 years ago, Lord Tengen was known as the Star, as she preached the foundations of Jujutsu. Tengen also spread Buddhism and religion, giving rise to many non-sorcerer groups like the Time Vessel Association that worshipped Lord Tengen like some deity. Tengen in truth was a human sorcerer, likely female, with a curse technique of immortality. However, her body still continues to age, and once every 500 years, Tengen needs to merge with a compatible star plasma vessel. These are special humans with potential to merge with Tengen like Riko Amanai and Yuki Tsukumo, although some vessels like Yuki may treat this honor as more of a burden. The involvement of star plasma vessels created tension between the Jujutsu Society and worshippers who wanted Tengen to remain pure, because if Tengen continues to age, they will evolve to a point where they lose their sense of self and swallow the whole world in darkness as Tengen goes chaotic and merges with all of humanity. Basically, it's like the 10 Tails and mass extinction, not a very good time at all. So throughout centuries, Tengen has been maintaining themselves using vessels and keeping these barriers in check up until 2006 when Toji killed Riko Amanai, and Tengen continued to evolve since then into this thing that we see today. However, Tengen is the most powerful barrier user in the series, and they are solely responsible for how Jujutsu operates in the country of Japan. Tengen has these barriers that conceal the Jujutsu world and protect the facilities from threats. They make it possible for assistant managers to create veils, and Tengen established pure barriers all around the country of Japan that keeps curses in check, and it also sets a kind of format for Jujutsu/barrier techniques that sorcerers use. These pure barriers are also what the Culling games are built on, and their destruction will start a very big change in the series. You see, Tengen is, you can say, good, but they have a tendency to be idle or indifferent toward their role. Tengen actually saved lives by not stopping the Culling games and taking down the barriers. Tengen still feels bad for the vessels inside of him, like Riko Amanai, who have to merge with her, and she doesn't want to go berserk, yet she can't stop her own evolution, and she cannot die herself. Tengen is surrounded by mystery, but the most intriguing fact is how she actually was friends with Kenjaku in the past. Kenjaku looks down on Tengen as a shut-in and hates how idle they are despite their power to literally change the world. And now, since Tengen kept evolving, she is more like a cursed spirit, and Kenjaku ultimately absorbed her, and at this point it's a ticking time bomb just what they will do. As soon as the Culling game ends, these barriers are undone, Tengen very well can end the entire world. However, with what has been hinted, sorcerers will likely continue to live since they can reject this merger, yet humanity will fall. So if it got to that point, then it'd really be like an entirely new age for sorcerers and curses. Kenjaku also pointed out how Tengen looked like Ryomen Sukuna, when he saw how much they evolved in this point, and this really hints toward how they are actually entities that are neither curse nor human, something greater. And Kenjaku really wants to see just what is the potential of humanity through Tengen. If Tengen was truly Kenjaku's friend at one point in history, then there was likely a time that Kenjaku actually might have been on the sorcerer's side. The only reason we even know the name Kenjaku is because Tengen told us, so the two clearly are very close. And when Sukuna was given his mummified corpse, the actual Shimbutsu ritual was held at Tengen's Pure Barrier location, yet Sukuna found it ironic that either Kenjaku or Tengen gave him this mummified corpse. At this point, it's undoubtable Tengen has a very close connection with Kenjaku and Sukuna to some degree, yet she does not seek any sort of ambition unlike those two. Tengen is worshipped, protected, and despised throughout the series, and currently now they are being used as a tool for Kenjaku. I actually think that Tengen probably held a position in the past in ancient Japan as the Onmyoji, the yin and yang master. It's a practice of divination and jujutsu, and this was a official position under the emperor and the Heian court, and it would make a lot of sense for Tengen to be like the progenitor for jujutsu and religion in Jujutsu Kaisen. They've been alive long enough and have vast knowledge of jujutsu, likely more than any other sorcerer in the story, and they have a deep connection with a lot of these Heian sorcerers and maybe even their clans as well. Overall, Tengen is like the beginning and the end because frankly, Tengen seems to be like the main problem. They were there at the early stages of jujutsu and sorcery. They may have even founded it, and yet here they are about to rewrite it all at the brink of humanity's extinction. Soon we will see just what Tengen was like in her heyday, and maybe even how Tengen is the key to breaking this cycle of curses. She is the reason jujutsu, sorcery, and curses can even function the way it does in Japan, so just maybe through Tengen we can unravel this never-ending cycle of curses.
Phantom Sorcerers. Jujutsu Kaisen Phantom Oporedo is a mobile action RPG gacha that just recently came out in late November in Japan. The game isn't out globally yet, so some of this info is surprisingly hard to get my hands on right now. This isn't a gaming channel yet, because I haven't quite hit rock bottom, so I'll spare you the details of the game and explain what I'm here to. Phantom Parade introduces some new characters in the JJK canon, being the first years of Fukuoka Jujutsu Technical School and their principal, Saki Rindo, Kaito Yuki, and Kensuke Nagino. What's baffling me is nobody seems to care about them. I can't find a single person uploading gameplay footage of these two new fighters, but this will be solved with time. Leave a comment down below if you know what their abilities are. I love hearing new powers in JJK. I really want to know who they'd be good and bad matchups against. I am dying to know their curse techniques, and I want to know if there's an answer to the very obvious question of where are they during the entire events of the manga. They might be real phantoms. Ooh, and look, somebody in my Discord just shared with me the design of the original villain for the game.
Yeah, Shiguro Megumi-kun.
Looks like his name is Oboro Zetsu. Since everything else was, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say Gege designed this dude, but honestly he looks nothing like any of JJK's other villains. From what I can gather, he's a special grade curse with the ability to somehow steal or confiscate your technique and put you into a weakened state. I'd like to say it'd be fun to break down the lore and characters of this game when it comes out, but some people are just translating it and doing that already, so I'll stick to whatever it is I'm doing on this channel these days. Other works. In previous videos, we've discussed the one-shot manga Gege did before starting Jujutsu Kaisen and its similarities to its ancestor. But at the time of writing that, all those months ago, I was actually entirely unaware that number 9 wasn't Akutami's only project at the time. There were actually 3 more circulated one-shots separate from number 9, being Kamishiro Sosa, Nikai Bangai Barobara Jura, he really doesn't make these easy, and number 9. Yes, again, there are 2 number 9s. No number 9 large though. I learned all of this from this really fun video by Santaniel. So if you want to go check out all the similarities between these stories and what would become JJK, go check it out. I'll leave it linked in the description. What I will tell you though is that Sosa has a character named Gege, Barabara Jura is Evangelion if it was okay, and Mike Wazowski is a prominent character in number 9, number 1. All of them, at their heart, are just kind of about sorcerers and curse spirits though. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, eh? Hanami's Domain. Domain expansions are few and far between, and it especially hurts when one is teased and never revealed. This is exactly what happened to Hanami in Season 1 of Jujutsu Kaisen. We hear her finally explain her powers boisterously before beginning her chant with the famous 2 words. But before we even heard what it was called, Gojo burst her bubble. But something honestly really cool has happened. Hanami's domain has been revealed in the Phantom Parade RPG. This gorgeous place is aptly named the Ceremonial Sea of Light, and her sure hit seems to be a spiking wooden growth staking through its victim's heart. The concept of revealing unused abilities in the format of a game is incredible, and while I myself likely won't play much of it, I really do hope it does well, because in a few years when the Culling Games eventually gets animated, we could see things like Yuta's domain in the game, or Ryu, or Uro's, or even Yuki's, and that's something to rally behind. Mimiko's finger. Oh, time to play our favorite game, Truth or Bluff! We've played it about 1,000 times by now because this series doesn't have one reliable narrator, not even the narrator. This brings us to B5. Mimiko and Nanako try to bargain with the King of Curses. Despite facing the most evil force in the world, they choke through their words and beg him to kill Kenjaku and free their master Geto. They say they know where another finger is, and if he complies, she'll tell him its location. Now at first, I was much like Sukuna and just blew this off. If he doesn't care about some lowly finger, why should we? Well, because there's only one left. Last video we had a whole discussion about where the last finger could be, but the question now remains, did these girls actually know the location of the final finger? Or was this all just a sacrificial bluff? Giving up their own lives, knowing Sukuna may eternally damn them for lying, but doing it all the same simply because this is the only thing that could bring Geto back. Sad, really. The time skip. When Gojo was unsealed, it was a big deal. Now we all know Gege is all about pedal-to-the-metal storytelling and getting to the good part right away, but I think all of us were expecting the story to slow down just an ounce at this moment. We seemingly got our wish when Gojo delayed his fight with Sukuna an entire month. I guess so he could die on the same day as Geto. When this came out, that week was so exciting to be a JJK fan. The excitement of what was about to come was in the air. It was electric. We were finally going to see Todo, find out what happened to Nobara, get a short training arc, and some much needed character interaction. Choso and Todo bonding, or fighting about their shared little brother. Gojo teaching his students. People's reaction to Maki's transformation, especially Yuji, would have been nice. Or an acknowledgement from anyone that Mai is dead. Or how about a continuation of Maki and Yuta's friendship, just a panel? Or Hikari rejoining his fellow classmates for the first time after being expelled for so long. Higuruma, Kashimo, Takaba, so many colorful characters together for an entire month, all training, all interacting, all planning. The idea that our main characters finally got to see each other for the first time in hundreds of chapters, and Gege skipped the entire thing. We immediately went to Gojo vs Sukuna, Jujutsu Kaisen therefore got absolutely no literary reprieve, Gojo died, and now the series may be close to ending? I want to trust Gege, but his handling of Nobara makes me honestly kind of sick. Why have people brought up Yuki's stupid red herring plot device Soul Book more than the special grade badass woman she was herself? Once again, how did Todo get gypped out of a single on-screen moment with his own master? Despicable. If there is truly never a reason for this time skip, never a justification for all that was omitted because Gege just simply wanted to be done, it's going to be a massive blow to how I and probably many of you perceive this series once it's completed. Please, Gege, do not drop the ball. Something that goes without saying is a massive thank you to the amazing creators who are willing to help me with this project. This is an insanely busy time of year, and between their family lives, personal lives, possible other jobs, and uploading on YouTube, they couldn't be more backed up. Yet they all still decided to jump in and participate in this video. That's magical. I'm a big fan of all the stuff they do, and I'm sure a lot of you are too. Go support them after the video. Their links are obviously going to be down in the description. I would list them all out, but at the time of recording this, I'm not positive who they all are yet. Plus, we're nowhere near done, and I don't want to spoil everyone. Come on, I'm getting impatient. Let's see what Tier 3 has in store for us.
Angel is a devil. By the way, if my mic sounds different from here on out, no it doesn't, you're going crazy. Truth is, there isn't a ton of evidence for Angel being evil or more of a devil than her nature shows, but she does have a history with Sukuna. Angel is or was a part of a powerful group that collectively refer to themselves as God. This is one of the most enigmatic details in all of Jujutsu Kaisen, and since we know that to be powerful you must be selfish, at least in a way, that casts sort of a negative and honestly scary light on this God figure. Is Angel who she says she is, just a volunteer here to help because of some past vengeances? Or is she an agent of evil? Her whole faded one line with Megami is a little dark when looking at it in retrospect, but if you want my opinion, I think people are a little butthurt over Hana's simping somehow butterfly affecting into Gojo's death. First of all, any teenage girl would simp over Megami, and that's just canon. But second, if you aren't misogynistic, you'd get off Hana's back and realize that she's just a girl, and Gojo was definitely gonna die anyways. He's the real misogynistic one here, by the way, leaving an 8-year-old Hana on the side of the road after she wasn't useful to his line of questioning. What the hell, man? She's clearly like a homeless and feral child all by herself. He could have at least recruited her into his child army. Are the sorcerers the bad guys? I'll get her next time. When Geto is stumbling away from his fatal fight with Yuta, he rambles on about Rika's insane levels of strength. If he had her, he wouldn't have had to sneak around in the shadows. He could have brazenly faced the world. This is wild because Geto knows Gojo more than anyone else, so the fact that he'd say this, like, what does he see in Rika that he thinks couldn't just rival Gojo but the world? We'll discuss how Rika could do this next, and why Kenjaku sees nothing in Yuta despite Rika's power. What we're going to talk about now, though, is what he says next. Next time, I'll get my hands on her for sure. Was this a curse? We know Geto and Kenjaku are more intertwined than we may originally think, seeing as how Geto is the one enrolled in the culling game right now despite being entirely controlled by Kenny. This would imply that something like a binding vow or a curse that affected Geto could stay with Kenjaku even after Geto is gone and dead. So was this line a curse that bound Kenjaku to steal Rika? Only time will tell. Currently that looks a little dubious, but seeing Yuta with stitches on his head is something people have been waiting for years. Yuta's Boogie Woogie. This one is a little controversial, but let's go through it step by step. Firstly, Kenjaku got completely beheaded by none other than Yuta Okkotsu. Does this dude's corny ass look like he belongs in iCarly to anybody else, or is that just me? Regardless, with Takaba's help, Yuta was able to get the drop on Kenny because of him being completely distracted. Kenjaku, despite being impaired, noticed Yuta, but when he turned around to try to crush him by using one of his most powerful techniques, Yuta was behind him. Was this just a good old speed blitz? Or did Yuta use a technique to do this? Maybe Uro's space manipulation or something? We aren't sure. A popular rumor, though, was that Okkotsu used Boogie Woogie. It's sort of a misconception that stems from the sound effect that was used, some people originally thinking that this was a smack or the sound of wooden clackers. Really, it was the sound of Yuta's cursed blade, but honestly, I don't despise this theory regardless. First, if Todo is just hiding in the bushes somewhere waiting to be tagged in, who cares? Let's be happy that he's back. If you're wondering why we didn't hear the clap, we discussed last video that Todo may be able to change the parameters of his technique, like being able to use it while winking instead of clapping. Would be pretty cool. What's more likely is that this is Yuta though, but it would still be great to see Yuta use his comrade's power. Yuta's abilities are still somewhat mysterious, but here's my take on it. I personally think Yuta does not have a copy curse technique, even though the narrator says that. I think Rika is his curse technique, which the narrator also says. Rika is a metaphorical storage unit. Well, I guess a literal storage unit. She's constantly carrying all of Yuta's weapons, and I think his abilities as well. When Yuta copies an ability, I think it could be him using that power through the medium of Rika and her power. This would explain why Kenjaku and Geto don't give a shit about Yuta. He is not special, he's just a kid who can unconditionally copy curse techniques. That sounds pretty powerful though, aka stealing Sukuna and Gojo's abilities, so why don't they care? Because Rika is the one who copies and stores them, not Yuta. It always bugs me though how few abilities Yuta steals from his friends and teachers. I really hope that's eventually explained. Of course he'd be more powerful if he could explode crows through people or go into jackpot mode or hit a fatal ratio technique or maximum purple. But the one that surprises me the most is Boogie Woogie. Yuta completely outclasses Toge at his own technique, and without his arm, he's just kind of out of business. A similar thing could happen for Todo. I mean, if he can't use his CT, at least let Yuta use it. Not only that, but Yuta is a part of a constant duo. Boogie Woogie works insanely well in 2v1s and would make Yuta and Rika a somewhat unrivaled force. So what gives, Gege? This stupid cat can't even bother to shed out a reason for why Yuta can't copy every single power he comes across. It's apparently unconditional, but this makes Yuta feel pretty goddamn stupid, no? If I was Yuta, I'd be trying to copy everybody, even special weird people like Maki and Panda. Who cares? Let's see what it does. Can he copy Curse's abilities? Has he ever even tried? Get your lame ass back to Drake and Josh, you half-baked pretty boy. You got soft hands, boy. Gojo's Mudra. So I know very little about Buddhism outside of what I know because of this manga, so huge thanks to user hi_Ari on Reddit for this post on r/Jujutsushi going over the hand symbolism here. It's definitely worthy of the cog of excellence it got. Ari's post highlights the many mudras of JJK, mudras being the hand sign you make to either achieve a domain expansion or just strengthen your technique. You may be wondering where they got this word from, mudras. It's not from JJK, it's a real practice in Buddhism. What it is an ancient way of meditation. By making specific gestures with your hands or entire body, you can produce joy, intense your flow of energy, or in some cases even harness and channel the power of deities. For instance, Jogo calls upon Shiva's power with the Mahakala Mudra. Sukuna's is for Yama, the king of hell. Yuta's is for a female demon. Hikari's is for one of the lucky gods, worshipped for wealth and being a deity of music. These all make so much sense. But Ari says the one that people constantly say represents Gojo is actually a total fluke. This is the hand seal for Indra, a god of weather, among other things. Many people assume this is Gojo's, but if you look closely, this is actually the wrong hand. Not only that, but the fingers are wrong. They're swapped. Gojo's index finger stays straight, unlike this. No way all of them would be drawn perfectly except for his, so after some digging by OP, it was revealed that Gojo's seal is actually one half of Marisi's mudra. Marisi isn't weather, but light itself and the sun, much more Gojo's speed. This goddess, yes she's a woman, is even sometimes known as the Queen of Heaven, basically Sukuna's opposite, being the King of Hell. This is super interesting, and honestly this post has enough meat in it for like 3 iceberg topics. They delve into Gojo's chants and their relation to Buddhism, Gojo himself being a representation of Buddha, and Gojo's connection to the power of light. Maybe the power of Marisi is how Gojo could have pulled off a white technique like we discussed earlier. All of this makes me question something though. Why did Gojo not once attempt the full seal of his technique? It's been said the more seals you do, the stronger your technique gets. Why do you think Sukuna is constantly two-handing it? Now that he's got 4 arms, he's pretty much constantly crutching off the power of hell. Gojo shouldn't have been stubborn. He should have learned from Sukuna, completed his seal, limitless max technique whited, but no, all Gojo knows is be a bad teacher, be a bad father figure, dress good, be silly, and die. Why don't we hear from someone who has more than a few Reddit posts worth of knowledge about Buddhism under their belt, though?
Yo, it's the Kogane, back again for another JJK Jalloberg. This time, instead of architecture and rivers, I want to talk to y'all about a little something called koans. Put simply, koans are riddles that Buddhist masters would give their students to bring them closer to enlightenment. Almost none of these riddles have tangible or universal answers. No answer can be seen as right or wrong. Answers are deeply personal from student to student and from sorcerer to sorcerer. Let's start with a simple example. What is the sound of one hand clapping? Who came to mind? Toto, right? So if this is the riddle, then what's Toto's answer? Applause is an exclamation of the soul. There's one specific book that made me realize that JJK is nothing but a series of these answers. That book is called the Woman Kon, or The Gateless Gate. And the introduction to that book, written by Master Muman, sets the tone far better than I can. Muman says, if you like sweets and easy living, skip this next part. It is for men tremendously intent on being reborn. On Satori, enlightenment. It can happen to you. In a flashing moment, something opens. You are new all through. You see the same, unsame world with fresh eyes. This universe-renewing power comes by grace, not logic. Whatever you do, or wherever you are, makes no difference. It doesn't make sense. It makes you. This book is one of the classic Zen texts, the Woman Kon, or literally, the no-gate barrier. Now, no-gate barrier? That sounds familiar, does it not? Barrierless domain. Now let's see who this excerpt reminds you of. These old teachers complimented their students by criticism. Blows, even. When they praised, it usually meant belittling. This was the custom. They had a deep concern of their pupils, but showed it in presence, not words. They were strong fellows. They gave their students questions for which the answers were their whole being. If your immediate thought didn't bring PTSD flashbacks of the Gojo characterization wars, then lucky you. But it's not just Gojo that this quote reminds me of. It also reminds me of Sukuna's constant berating of Yuji and his, shall I say, life and death lessons that he gives out so freely. Now that I've given you a teeny tiny crash course on my topic, it's time to dive a bit further into the book. From here on out, I'll simply spew examples and see if we can find some parallels. This next one is called Joshu's dog. A student asked his master Joshu, "Does a dog have Buddha nature?" Joshu answered, "Mu." Mumon's comment on this koan goes on to tell us that mu is the Chinese symbol meaning no thing, not necessarily nothing, the way that we think about it today, but utter nothingness. He says the way to enlightenment only opens once the path of thought is blocked, and that the way to Zen requires one to pass through the barrier of the patriarchs. Now you're probably wondering what the barrier to the patriarchs is. Now Mumon tells us it's this one word, mu. Mu must be carried day and night throughout one's whole body to reach Zen. In other words, something like a heavenly restriction, or the ideal of leaving it all behind. When your whole being is locked into nothingness, you have awakened. And speaking of the Zenins, let's move on to Megami-related riddle. This koan is called Keichu's Wheel. Master Getsuan said to his students, Keichu, the first wheel maker of China, made 2 wheels of 50 spokes each. Now suppose you remove the hub uniting those spokes. What would become of the wheel? And had Keichu done this, could he be called the master wheel maker? Mumon's comment following this koan states that when the hubless wheel turns, master or no master can stop it. It turns above heaven and below earth, south, north, east, and west. Given the imagery of the wheel, and the understanding that there's a possibility of 2 wheels existing not only in this koan but also within JJK, gives me tremendous hope for Megami's awakening. His ties to both the angel and the fallen certainly lays enough of a foundation for me to look toward his transcendence both above heaven and below earth. Another koan I couldn't help but tie into the Zenins is Bells and Robes. The koan itself is pretty vague, but Mumon's comment is rather illuminating. The world is so wide. Why do you answer a bell and don ceremonial robes? Mumon's comment states that when one studies Zen, one need not follow sound, or color, or even form. But the real Zen student controls sound, color, and form, and actualizes this truth in everyday life. That to understand it intimately, one should see sound. He states that when you understand, you belong to the family. When you do not understand, you're a stranger. Those who do not understand belong to the family, and when they understand, they are strangers. This koan has both one-to-one and figurative parallels to JJK. For example, the warning bells ringing out at the Zenin compound and Naoya answering them in his ceremonial robes. But there's also the truth that Naoya simply could not ever understand what it meant to be Toji. And although he was indeed part of the family, Naoya was undeniably an outsider to that understanding. And in the end, it was Maki, the family outcast, who saw sound and actualized that truth for herself. Now the last koan I want to share is weapon-based. It involves a staff. Now whether it applies to Sukuna or Megami, I'll leave that for you to decide. Basho's staff. Master Basho said to his disciples, if you have the staff, I will give it to you. If you have no staff, I will take it away from you. Mumon's comment on this koan brings my ideas about crossing rivers back into perspective, believe it or not. He states that this staff helps you cross the river with a shattered bridge. It leads you back to your village in the moonless dark of night. If you call the staff yours, you will go right to hell like an arrow. Whether one is deep or shallow, it lies in the palm of the hand which holds the staff. The staff supports the heaven and maintains the earth. Wherever the staff freely goes, it will propagate this truth. Some of this may seem far-fetched or utterly nonsensical to y'all, but I've always been the type to find value in the cultural implications and inspirations behind the stories I love. As an American, I wasn't raised around Zen tales or historical shrines, so when I fell in love with the medium of manga, I decided I'd do my best to understand what I could of the authors pulling from their own cultural history and experience. And through that cultural consideration, the stories always seem to make more sense, even if that sense is of the existential type. If these koans interested you, believe me, the treasure trove is far deeper than the Gateless Gate. My personal favorite is a letter written by Master Empty Cloud. It's called The Song of the Skin Bag. and it also heavily applies to the Zenins. I encourage you to take a look. Anyway, I have overstayed my welcome yet again. Thank you for allowing me to ramble about nonsense again, Jallo.
Of course, Kogane. Can somebody else go, though? I'm not quite ready for my next one yet. Broken Vow.
I don't think anyone's ready for Megumi's return to the story, but before even thinking about what he'll do, what if we talk about just how exactly he'd even be able to come back in the first place? Now, at the time of this recording, Sukuna's about to get stabbed by Yuji with the Executioner Blade. The current plan is to kill Sukuna with said blade, and so it would automatically give Megumi back because Sukuna's dead while Megumi's in his body. Or Sukuna's in Megumi's body. Or... man, I don't know. Regardless, this is JJK. I don't think Sukuna's just done here, so what I think will happen instead is something crazy. So let's get into it. In chapter 11 of the manga, Sukuna and Yuji discuss a binding vow. On Itadori's side, he'd be revived, but on Sukuna's side, he'd be able to take over Yuji's body for a full minute, and Yuji forgets about the vow. But what's important here is the fact that Sukuna added another thing to favor Yuji, and that was not being able to kill or hurt anyone during that minute. Fast forward all the way to chapter 212 and Sukuna says Enchain. He takes over Yuji's body and takes a gamble. What he ended up doing was breaking Yuji's finger off, and Sukuna waits a couple of seconds for a consequence. But upon receiving none, he laughs, saying that Yuji didn't include himself. Now here's where the cooking starts. Sukuna thinking Yuji didn't include himself in the binding vow because he didn't receive any consequences immediately after isn't completely true. In chapter 79, Kenjaku states that the when and the what of the consequence of breaking a binding vow is completely unknown. The term anyone should include Yuji in a technical sense, and so there is room for the possibility that Sukuna has broken the binding vow. Now, with that in mind, Kenjaku also said the worst thing that can happen with a broken binding vow to yourself is that you lose what you gained. I think in terms of the binding vows with other people, the best thing that can happen is that you lose what you gained. So the best case scenario for Sukuna is that he just loses Megumi. To further support my claim, in chapter 216, there's a slight emphasis on the small cut in Sukuna's finger. People think this is Yuji's cleave, but for the purpose of this theory, what if this was the failed binding vows starting to reverse its effects? In the same panel that Sukuna sees the cut, he immediately asks where the hell Sumiki is because he wants to break Megumi down even more by killing his sister. And so if he does that, Megumi will lose his will to fight. The extent to which the binding vow can impact Sukuna is vast, and so with that in mind, I leave the task of coming up with the worst consequences that comes to mind to you, the audience. With that being said, that's my quick theory about Megumi's return.
Finger theory. So there's this theory that's been bouncing around for years that I'm going to christen finger theory for lack of a better name. Here, look at this charcuterie board of Sukuna fingers Jogo pulls out for him to snack on. Do you notice anything about them? They're all different. One is earthy, another crystalline. Some look like stones, minerals, even a few tentacled ones. Perhaps each one of Sukuna's fingers contains a different curse technique. This would be wild. Some of these look pretty powerful. Maybe these came from natural spirits or other ancient disaster curses. Who knows what abilities Sukuna has stolen and could be hiding. If he even steals techniques at all, we really don't know. Is there any other proof we can find? Well, if we look at the finger bearer, a being whose sole purpose is to house and feed off of this powerful object, he has an imaginary bow and arrow, just like Sukuna's flame arrow. Maybe the fire arrow technique was stored in the finger, and that raw power influenced the finger bearer so much that it imbued it with an imitation of that legendary ability. That was a hard sentence to say. This could mean Yuji has nearly 20 techniques if you want to be generous. Regardless of how much weight I think this theory holds, I do find it interesting that all of Sukuna's fingers have different little cupcake decorations on them. That's really cute. The next Six Eyes user. Something's been on my mind ever since Gojo's end. His character did have a satisfying and conclusive arc, no matter what the losers on Twitter say. He died doing what he loved, and that's okay, because from the very start it was about fostering his students' strength, not his own. All of that was fine and good, but it was one little thing that had me hung up. The Six Eyes. No matter if Gojo comes back or not, his unique one-of-a-kind ability known as the Six Eyes has got to be covered again within this story. It was made so boisterously important, but then kind of cast entirely to the wayside. This strange ability boosts Gojo heavily and gives his domain and technique a whole new dimension to work in. With the Six Eyes, Gojo can see the flow of cursed energy to the level that he can read your technique just by looking at you. The only other major thing we know about this bizarre power is how it strangely gets passed down over time. Multiple Six Eyes users have come from the Gojo clan, one even having the Six Eyes and Limitless like Gojo, just 100 years ago. Who was it? Can only Gojo clan members wield this power? What we do know is that the Six Eyes has a lot to do with fate, not only because of the heredity of it, but Tengen states that fate has them inextricably locked to both the Star Plasma Vessel and the Six Eyes. But now, Tengen is gone. The Star Plasma Vessels are gone. And now, so is Gojo and the Six Eyes. This leaves us with two massive questions. One, what has Kenjaku done to fate? Are the Holy Trinity here even connected now that they're all dead? Will they all come back in some way, or all stay gone? If the Six Eyes do get passed on, there are a few contenders for who could get its power next. There's of course the option that it just gets passed down to the next newborn baby, meaning it's likely already happened. Or it goes to Gojo's next of kin, who surprisingly is Yuta. They're distant relatives of some kind, and neither seem to have much other family. There's also the option that Gojo is somehow alive, and the Six Eyes simply either hasn't gone away yet, or Gojo sacrificed the Six Eyes in some sort of binding vow to save his life. We talked about that idea last time, before Gojo even got Fruit Ninja'd. The Theory of Souls.
Theory of souls within Jujutsu Kaisen is something that's come up multiple times, starting with Mahito. Mahito was able to touch souls, and it being his technique led him on the path to fighting Yuji. But Yuji was immune to his soul being damaged or transfigured or transformed due to him housing Sukuna. Sukuna is also someone who has transcended death and learned how to pour and split his soul into cursed objects, the same cursed objects that Yuji ate, which triggered this entire story. Sukuna also had enough knowledge on the soul to recognize that he needed to break Megami's soul in order to take over completely, and then he knew that killing Sumiki, or in this case Yorozu, would completely seal the deal of his takeover completely. Sukuna was also able to shift the burden of Unlimited Void from himself to Megami's soul when he was caught within Gojo's Unlimited Void, allowing Mahoraga to adapt, meaning Sukuna has even more control over souls than we know about, and he's also the only person within the series we've seen shown inside the innate domain, which is theorized to be connected to the soul, and on top of this is the only person to have shown having these strange dreamlike conversations with two of his opponents, one being Jogo and the second being Kashimo. Possibly implies that Sukuna can access the souls of people he kills in their final moments. And interestingly though, we didn't see this for Gojo. Speaking of Gojo, something weird happened in Shibuya where Gojo called out to Geto's soul, having mentioning how he knew in his own soul it wasn't Geto that he was looking at. And in response, Geto's soul responded and actually choked Kenjaku, with Kenjaku laughing and giving us this juicy piece of information. The soul is the body and the body is the soul. And this isn't the only time Gojo did something like this. He was also able to tell upon a glance that Yuji and Sukuna had combined, since he knows that Sukuna has to pour his soul into a cursed object to manifest. Gojo was able to determine that they hadn't combined yet. And then on top of all of this, Gojo was able to notice two separate souls within Sukuna's body when they fought. This is more than likely due to the Six Eyes. And then finally, on top of all of this, we have Tengen, Yuki, and the Star Plasma Vessels. And Yuki herself, being a former Star Plasma Vessel, is able to hear the souls that have been absorbed into Tengen. And Tengen, no longer being able to hear those souls for an undisclosed reason, and to top it off, Yuki has written a whole book on souls. It's a theory and a topic that runs incredibly deep within Jujutsu Kaisen, and the more you read it, the more information you'll find. Eventually, one day, Gege will eventually explain souls, but maybe not. And if he did, I think that'd be pretty cool. But you should try searching on the subject of souls within Jujutsu Kaisen, because there's a lot out there.
Self-insert. People self-insert themselves into every series available in terms of fanfiction, but don't think that this phenomenon is limited to amateurs. Many, I'd say even most, fictional characters find some inspiration from the people who pen them. Some aren't that obvious, but some are Rohan from JoJo's. Take for instance Butch Hartman, the creator of The Fairly OddParents on Nickelodeon, made his self-insert character a completely unlikable prick whose only character trait is being sexy. Dr. Studwell. I gotta write this down. But does Jujutsu Kaisen have a self-insert of its own? This is an idea that's been going around forever, and there are a few promising candidates in all honesty. First up is Charles Bernard, a character many of you are probably unfamiliar with, either because you forgot he existed, or are an anime only who didn't heed my warnings. Charles is a young Frenchman and a failing mangaka. He has some troubling anger issues and is desperately trying to get his manga published and find an audience who appreciates him. This character seems more like a parody of Rohan than it does a caricature of Gege. Is Charles really the man we've been looking for? I'm not sure. And I'm not really sure what that would say about Akutami. Charles is pathetic, he's narcissistic, and can take a punch easier than criticism. Another option is Takaba. This one has no real evidence except for Gege being silly, and making his self-insert the most out of place and over-the-top freak imaginable. Nanami is also an option, being Gege's favorite character, but I don't really see them acting like this in real life. I want to talk about the two most interesting options, Gojo and Sukuna. You might be surprised that I say Gojo. If you know much about Gege, it's that he hates Gojo. But if you look at the self-deprecating portrayal of the mangaka, maybe this is just Gege finding another weird way to put themselves down, imbuing their silliness and, honestly, loneliness into the portrayal of the most tragic character in the series. Other than Sukuna. This one is it. I mean, I personally believe all JJK characters have a little Gege in them, but Sukuna is pure, unadulterated Cyclops cat. First of all, they both axe off our beloved characters. They both want to kill Gojo. Gege said in interviews when asked what character he's like, that he's the furthest thing from Yuji's kindness. Maybe this whole time, Sukuna himself has just been a vessel for a one-eyed feline to wreak as much selfish chaos as his little heart desires. Like I said though, I think many of our characters and their varied ideologies are all Gege exploring different parts of his own worldview. What happens when you sacrifice what you want? What happens when you become greedy? Or if you just decided to burn it all down? Will Gege figure themselves out and pick if the good guys or bad guys are going to win already? Baffling, I know, but I seriously think they haven't decided yet. Intermission 3. I don't need to say that, what the fuck am I doing? Hi. Do people skip these intermissions? I really have no clue. This one is short, but its purpose is twofold. One, subscribe. Come on, you're over halfway through part 3 of a 5-hour series, and that's just so far. The second thing I'm going to get on my hands and knees and beg you to do is check out the other things in the Jallo catalog. I talk about cartoons, other anime, cryptids, music, movies, games, and the lineup of stuff I planned for 2024 is going to be crazy. Last year, 13 uploads. This year, I'm going to try to at least triple if not quadruple that. I was hoping that last year was going to be the year of the moth, but floating into 2024, I'm already convinced the Lepidopteran calendar must have been 1 year off. Thank you, and welcome to Tier 4. Cover consistencies. Clever fans have been keeping track of a trend, a detail the manga has hidden within it. Me personally, I've always found the hints towards numerology in this series strange. Between dates and stats and stuff like that, and multiple numbers pop up quite frequently. The 6 eyes, Gojo actually has many references to the number 7, the 9 cursed wombs and Yuji making 10, the 10 shadows technique. One number I've been waiting for though, super patiently, is 13. It's the most cursed number there is, and I've been keeping a sharp eye out for it. Apparently not sharp enough though, because someone in the community has found something far more interesting than just simply the number 13. Here's an image from all the way back in chapter 1. A dark hallway, completely unrelated to the events of the chapter. A puddle of blood sprayed across the floor. 13 volumes later, we get another one of these extra ambient pages. This is the exact same hallway. But as we can see, it was Yuji here who must have created this red splotch. Perhaps one of Mahito's cursed spirits in Shibuya. But this little connection between these two pictures isn't the end of the road. Volume 2 of JJK has a similar creepy liminal image, this time sporting some kind of dark, ghostly apparition crying in a lobby. Exactly 13 volumes later, we see Megami in that same spot. These creepy images and character portraits persist, sometimes containing creepy figures in the distance, and sometimes with nothing out of place. Just like 1 and 14 and 2 and 15, volumes 3 and 16 connect to Shonobara. Then Gojo in 4 and 17, and Todo in 5 and 18, Mahito, Choso, and so on. What decides this order appears to just be who's on the volume cover to begin with. Volume 8 and 9 actually have connections to Volume 0's art, I'm not sure why, so those chapters got skipped, and 10 now lines up with Volume 21. Now the difference is 11 instead of 13. At the time of recording this, the newest volume is Volume 24, featuring Hana and Angel on the cover. If this pattern continues, we'll see her make an appearance in Volume 35, if JJK gets that far. Is this all just some weird stylistic detail, or does it mean something? Is the numerology in JJK entirely superficial? Something subtle just to creep us out? Keep an eye out for the number 13, and an even sharper eye for something going from 13 down to 11. Maybe we can make some kind of inference here. Ever since Gege started making cheeky little timing consistencies between the anime and the manga, I don't even know what to think anymore. The cat is toying with us, and we need to be one step ahead, so leave no stone unturned. Your brain on RCT. Before I begin, I got a lot of these ideas from Femtalope on the Jujutsushi subreddit. This contentious conversation has come up so many times in these videos, and it's no wonder why. The fact that even Kenjaku himself doesn't understand the true nature of the soul, the body, and the brain is a little concerning. The brain has always been a strange outlier to me in the world of Jujutsu. You see, cursed energy comes from your gut, but blessed energy comes from the brain. Fine, RCT, whatever, that's so much lamer. But Sukuna, despite being from 1,000 years ago, has intimate knowledge of the anatomy of the human brain. Kusakabe calls the brain in Jujutsu a black box, which doesn't even need an explanation to be concerning. The overall theory is that while cursed energy comes from the navel, cursed techniques are something literally etched into your brain. When Sukuna and Gojo burn each other out, wearing through their entire techniques, they do something incredibly risky. Basically, they crush their own brains and then instantly heal them, jumpstarting the cooldown on their technique and thus their domains. This is feral. But this could be how characters like Sukuna and Kenjaku toggle between techniques, by crushing their frontal cortex and rebuilding it with a new CT. And the way they steal techniques is almost certainly by digestion, a la the Curse of Ymir from Attack on Titan. Sukuna's cannibalism is how he sees or eats the knowledge of his victim's abilities, but Kenjaku likely does the same. It's interesting that Kenjaku, like the brain, still has a mouth. It almost surely serves a purpose, so to hot bodies and steal techniques, he most likely needs to eat your brain. With his brain! God, did John Carpenter direct this shit? This would explain why no two techniques have ever been used by a single person simultaneously. If you're wondering about Yuta, he copies through Rika, so don't. Gotta throw this in at the end, but a weird piece of foreshadowing, or at least an allusion to this idea, is Yorozu telling Sukuna they'll have monkey brain soup at their wedding. Aw, how romantic. What is Yuji? I really just think right now is a good time to remind you that we, as an audience, have no clue what our main character even is. Is Yuji a regular human? Is he a cursed womb? Something in between? Is he one of Sukuna's fingers given life? Is he an incarnated sorcerer from hundreds or even thousands of years ago? Some even think he's some kind of cursed corpse, a cursed tool like Garuda, and much, much more. Isn't it wild we're like 250 chapters into this series and we can't even answer that? This series is so goddamn cryptic that every page has some kind of bait to keep you reading. That damn cat is just as smart as they are dastardly. Sukuna makes several remarks about Yuji looking like some guy from quote-unquote back then. But yeah, that's what this is all about. We're in the third one of these videos, and these damn books are so cryptic in nature that we're still asking questions like what the hell even is the main guy in 2024, 6 years after Chapter 1's release. This series is too mysterious for its own good. I mean, come on, it takes a literal cryptid to explain all this shit to you. Ugh, I need a raise. Kenjaku is a woman. Right now, take a moment to ask yourself all we really know about Kenjaku. It isn't much, and it kind of boils down to he's exceedingly cruel about his journey to be the silliest little bastard in the whole world. He's kind of just Bill Cipher from Gravity Falls right now, wanting to cause as much bizarre chaos as possible. Like, hey guys, let's spawn Sukuna and kill billions, cause hey, he's the unemployed friend on a Wednesday at 1 PM. What else is he gonna do? Can't boys have any fun? Well, what I'm clearly getting at is that even that we don't know. Kenjaku's original form is unknown, if they even had one. Right now, Kenjaku is a brain. That's what they are. They just don't have that cool flesh mech to pilot. Well, they do, but it was a hand-me-down. I just need to get out with it. I've thought Kenny here has originally been a woman for years. I'm gonna self-impose a binding vow on myself right now. If I can think of 10, yes, 10 pieces of individual evidence to support this theory, then it's 100% confirmed. 1. They've inhabited a woman's body before, and it seemed pretty natural. 2. Yuji's mom wasn't the only time one of his vessels mothered hard as shit. Look at this. That's another clue. 3. He's literally got at least 10 kids. Motherhood is the center of Kenjaku's character. 4. Takaba turned him into a female nurse in one of the most recent chapters, but Kenny admits that both of their imaginations caused what's happening. So was this their doing? 5. In the same chapter, Kenny quotes a female Hunter x Hunter character by saying, "I never achieved that until my late 20s, about this fruity-ass yoga pose." Kenjaku could just be gay, but he broke up the biggest gay couple in anime history, so I think it's much more likely that they're a homophobic woman. 6. How has Sukuna not killed them in the 1,000 years they've been plotting against him in the background? Do they have a vow together? A wedding vow? 7. Look at this outfit. Now look at this outfit. 8. Their domain is literally called Womb Profusion. Last time I checked, I don't think dudes have those. Now I know what you might be thinking. How did you check?
Now I know what else you might be thinking. Noya's domain was also a vagina. First of all, this is because misogyny was a key part of his character, and it was just the look of his domain, not the name. The name is usually very indicative of you and your technique. Hikari is the restless gambler, stuff like that. So if Kenjaku's domain, a manifestation of their soul, is named after a womb, I mean, come on. 9. That Kenjaku sure is twisted, aren't they? This would make what Kenjaku did to Choso's mother have a uniquely traumatizing sting to it. If they were a woman and knew what it would be like to put her through such torment, I don't know. If it makes Kenny sound more evil, I'm gonna say it sounds believable. And 10. Kenjaku has ties to God, in the way that he created man, Yuji, and him being part of the unholy trinity, Kenjaku the father, Mahito the son, and Sukuna the unholy spirit. Back in 2018, when JJK came out, Ariana Grande revealed that God is actually a woman. Need I say more? There it is, definitively proven with the scientific accuracy of a goddamn caliper. You're welcome. Bizarre lineage. Bizarre lineage could easily be about how Gojo and Yuta are strangely distant relatives, connected by one of the most unknown and enigmatic yet powerful entities to ever live. But it isn't. It's actually about this guy. Remember him? Wasuke Itadori, Yuji's grandfather, his Uncle Ben. Be a nice kid and try to help others. You catch my drift? We don't know much about him, so I don't want to make any big wild inferences. But is there anything we can glean? Are there any mysterious figures in JJK's lore that could actually be Wasuke here? Well, Kenjaku steals the body that he does because he wants to steal Kaori's anti-gravity technique. With it, he can float, presumably creating his own inertia and having the ability to push off air, which makes evading attacks incredibly easy. Plus, he can block nearly anything with his reversal gravity. It's sort of like a worse and more manual version of Infinity. A pretty powerful technique though, nonetheless. Because of this, it's safe to say Yuji's mom, Kaori, was probably a Jujutsu sorcerer, or a curse user, or vigilante, or something. The only thing we know about Wasuke really is that when his daughter-in-law showed back up after dying with a mysterious set of forehead stitches, he saw it as instantly suspicious. And while his son was too head over heels to care and just relished in having his wife back, Wasuke never budged. This has led many to the logical conclusion that if Wasuke understood, as truly as he did, what Kenjaku was, then he probably wasn't just some nobody. Sure, he could have been some nobody, just a regular human with a bad feeling, but he could have also been somebody important right under our nose the entire story. Look at this family tree of the Zenin clan. There's a lot of old men missing here, one set of question marks placed right above Toji. Also, whoa, Junichi is Toji's brother? I have never noticed that. Either way, is there any chance Wasuke here could be the mysterious 23rd clan head and Toji's father? This would make Yuji and Megumi cousins, but I'm not so sure. Nobody else in the Zenin clan has pink hair like we presume the Itadori men all have. Also, look at how similar Ogi and Naobito look, and how all the Zenins look for that matter, compared to him. Maybe he used to have black hair. Another intriguing thing about this chart is that it extends. This is in no way the whole Zenin bloodline. It makes a clear point to say that Chojuro and Ranta are off on some other branch of the family. And quite mysteriously, it seems to skip completely over the 24th clan head of the lineage. We go straight from 23, Ogi and Naobito's father, to 25, Toji's father. This omission is without a doubt purposeful, so what is going on here? Hell's Kitchen. With the new season of JJK out, there's all sorts of things the dubbing chooses to tweak, but the subs definitely aren't perfect either, and are much more prone to small but very noticeable changes in wording. One of the more noticeable being when Sukuna fought Mahoraga, or, oops, Makora, as the subtitles read. When Sukuna opens his domain, the choice of words they initially went with in many versions of the text was Malevolent Kitchen. But this was just a silly error, right? Well, no. The name of Sukuna's technique does appear to have some correlation with cooking. His domain is colloquially known. His domain is colloquially known. His domain is colloquially. His domain is colloquially known. 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 Colloquially. Fuck, why is this so hard to say? Colloquially. Is colloquially known. Is colloquially known. Is colloquially known. Is colloquially known. His domain is colloquially known as Fukuma Mizushi. Which, yes, you can translate roughly to Malevolent Shrine, but you could just as easily translate it to Hell's Kitchen, literally. Fukuma means where my demons hide, and Mizushi is an archaic word referring to a kitchen or the Emperor's eating area. Cleave and dismantle, in terms of kanji, which is kai and hachi, both also refer to food, being terms for slicing and filleting fish. Let's not forget that Sukuna is all about eating. He's a cannibal king with people offering up town-sized sacrificial feasts for his majesty. He's got a stomach right on his belly for easy access to swallowing people whole. The only person he actually likes is another cook. He tells Gojo that he's nothing more than a nameless fish on his cutting board, and stripping him of his infinity will be like ripping off the scales and getting him ready to tear into. I think Ryu and his need for seconds and dessert are both metaphors for this drive for power, and Sukuna is the monk that has been preaching that same ideology for 1,000 years. And yeah, he's probably the original, like a twisted version of Buddha. It's so interesting to see how Sukuna's beliefs have shaped the world and its inhabitants. Mind Manipulation CT.
Only this time I brought my secret weapon. My brain.
He's talking about brain control.
Brain control? What are you doing? Oh my god. I am making you say everything that I say.
Yeah, but I'm saying it first.
Are you?
Oh my gosh.
I am very, very powerful.
Yuji's supposed mind manipulation or memory manipulation is something that we debunked forever ago. Months ago, in fact. So what are we doing here talking about it all the way in Tier 4? Well, make sure you're sitting down for this one, leeches and germs, because what if it was all foreshadowing? Something you may vaguely remember is during Yuki's fight with Kenjaku. She predicts he has a secret fourth thing, a technique he's been hiding the whole time, something unlike blood manipulation, unlike anti-gravity, and unlike cursed spirit manipulation. Personally, I think he's got more than 4, because A, hopping into bodies has got to be his or her innate technique, right? And B, unless the bodies stop aging, or he can somehow preserve them, in 1,000 years he's gonna have to have needed more than just 4 or 5. But is there evidence of one of these techniques being mind manipulation? Well, first, they're a brain, so I feel like it's kind of fitting. Perhaps his body hopping ability is just an effect of mind manipulation, like he's manipulating his own mind to be autonomous. We know Kenjaku as very persuasive in nature. How does a regular human manage to work with so many curses, including all 4 disasters and Sukuna himself? Maybe he's not working with them. Maybe they're working for him. This is most likely really hard to use, or maybe he just needs really specific conditions for it to be effective. Brain control seems kind of overpowered and undetectable, but this weird ability could somehow be transiently affecting Yuji, hence the Choso and Todo moments. Nothing more than an afterburn of Kenny's technique imprinted onto Yuji. This idea, like surprisingly many others, fits into the story just like a puzzle piece. But the puzzle isn't done yet, so we can't be sure. And wait, is the piece a little wobbly? Maybe it doesn't go there. Oh no, I dropped some. I can't do this. I can't do this. Domain times 4. Bouncing off of our previous observations about Kenjaku's supposed extra techniques and innate domain, I and many others have some questions. Like, can Kenjaku only do their domain expansion, Womb Profusion? Is Womb Profusion even representative of their original CT? Could they do an anti-gravity technique domain? Or what about a maximum technique? Could they hypothetically have multiple? I'm taking this to the extreme, so can Kenny do more than one at the same time? Either by overlapping all the barriers on top of each other, or by simply imbuing more than one technique into the barrier? A domain with like 10 different sure hits kind of sounds terrifyingly cool. Whew, finally another intermission. I was getting thirsty. If you're interested in seeing my videos early, I'm really trying to get my YouTube membership set up. Gonna do some cool custom moth tiers and stuff. Hopefully it'll be done by the time this video goes up. While we're here, if you could have any curse technique, what would it be? Put your answers down below, or in the Jallo Plaza, I'm curious. Kenjaku asked me what mine would be, but I'm not good at decision making, so I eeny meeny miny mowed that shit and got puppet manipulation. If I knew he was gonna idle transfigure the technique onto me, I would have chosen something different. Oh wait, actually this is cool, watch this. Domain expansion, Joanne Fabrics. Sacrificial body. This is an amalgamation of many bizarre ideas that Gege's placed in our heads over the years. Yuji's corporeal form is undoubtedly special, in more ways than one, and we've discussed his heroic nature over and over again. Last video there was even an entry on that exact topic called Yuji's Cosmic Sacrifice, but this time let's keep our discussion more down to earth. Remember when we talked about how Gege hasn't yet decided the fate of our 4 main characters? They said either 3 of them die and 1 survives, or just 1 goes and the rest remain. You might be thinking, Jallo, this has already been answered.
Nobara, Megumi, and Gojo are all gone. Only Yuji remains. But the story isn't over yet, and JJK is nothing without its twists and turns. That's right, I think Gege is gonna pull a bait and switch on us. He's making us think that Yuji is the only one left alive, when in truth, none of these three characters are actually dead in any sort of definitive way. Nobara, Megumi, and Gojo seem to all three be in a state of unknowable limbo right now, and Yuji is at a very important precipice. Will he be the sole survivor or somehow sacrifice himself for his friends? First and foremost Megumi, who asked Yuji for help. But how can Fushiguro be saved from Sukuna, and is there even anything left of him within this Heian beast? I think so, and Yuji does too, saying he has a few ideas on how a Megumi rescue mission could go down. Knowing Yuji, I think he's gonna go all in, literally. Let me reiterate, Yuji's body is not normal, and maybe its strangest property is just how perfect it is as a prison for Sukuna. So will Yuji plunge himself into the King of Curse's cannibalistic maw in an attempt to overpower Sukuna internally once again? I know I keep saying this, but I don't know how I'd feel about this if it went down. It would be poetic in a way. Sukuna was eaten by Yuji and corrupted by him, so Yuji would do the same to take him down and free his friend. But it's a tad bit off-putting, no? Stupid survivor. Okay, so for this one, you're gonna have to shimmy down the same complicated pipeline I had to for a few hours to write this entry. Okay, so get this. There's this anime called Bobobo. What is it about? I read the wiki and still couldn't tell you. That's the main character's name too, by the way. And apparently, whatever people still lurk in this 20-year-old fandom refer to the series as Bo times 7. That's not silly enough though, so I'm gonna call it Bobobo. But no, stay with me. The second opening theme of Bobobo is called Baka Survivor. Yes, there's a second OP. This show got 76 episodes. Holy shit, maybe it was good, I'm not sure. I don't have the time to find out. This song kinda bangs though. But regardless, I couldn't find where this moment was in the anime, even though I scrubbed through like half the series, but there's a part in Bobobo that has a lot of parallels with some recent matters in the Jujutsu Kaisen manga. One of the characters, Tokuro Tenosuke, is this giant dude made of jello who's friends with Bobobo. And in this part of their journey, they're kind of doing what the Peanut Gallery is doing in JJK. They're all watching a big fight go down in the city, and they're all sending out guys strategically one by one or in small groups to take care of different threats. Jelly Jiggler, as he's known in the English dub, decides he can't watch any more of this and goes out to join the fight. And then immediately dies. But, come on, look at this. Does this look familiar to you? Now that I'm thinking about it, there might be some other idiot who goes out to fight and then ends up in half laying there in the rubble coughing up blood. So, why would Gege reference this 2002 manga in the biggest scene of the biggest current series in the world? Not positive. But this is obviously something Akutami would like. Wacky characters, quirky writing, strange power system with a zillion attacks. From what I could gather, nobody really respects our man Jelly here, except this one kid who sees him as a mentor and as a real person. That's actually really similar to Gojo and Yuji. Yuji might be the only character who sees Gojo for Gojo and not the strongest. But here's the kicker, okay? The chapter of Gojo's death is titled Stupid Survivor. I don't know how to break this to you. If you thought all of that was crazy, you haven't even heard the half of it. In chapter 49 of Bobobo, just a mere 5 chapters after his death, Tokuro Tenosuke just shows up. And his death is never mentioned. He's just back, and nobody cares. Is Gege hinting that Gojo's end wasn't as definitive as it looks? Is he going to stroll around the corner in a few chapters like nothing happened? Or is this an elaborate troll from Gege to confuse people like me who look too close into things? Alright, so editing Moth here, there's been an update on this one. The next 2 chapters of JJK were called Stupid Survivor Live On and Stupid Survivor Win and Remain, which are both lyrics from Bobobo's theme. And the whole lyric is actually live on, win and remain, rise up, soar, cry and scream, and be boisterously noisy. And while it would have been nice to get 4 more chapters of Takaba going silly, Yuta snuck in and cut it before that could happen. Really, this was just Gege trolling the community into thinking Takaba would have had some entire arc. But all of this trolling could just be to distract from the evidence pointing towards the real stupid survivor, Gojo's return.
Sukuna is Gojo's ancestor. Okay, I know even just the title card sounds insane, but hear me out. Remember in Volume 0 when Gojo told Yuta they were related? What he says is apparently Yuta is a descendant of Sugawara no Michizane, which makes the both of them distant relatives. And I think there's a decent chance that Ryomen Sukuna himself could be Sugawara no Michizane in Jujutsu Kaisen. Why? Allow me to explain. In the real-world lore and history of both Sukuna and Sugawara, both are beings who are simultaneously deified and viewed as curses. Both were aristocrats that were pushed out of power, and in JJK, Sugawara no Michizane is canonically a vengeful spirit, so we can see the story and real-world lore lining up there. Sukuna's identity as the Fallen, especially since this is coming from Angel, whose imagery is obvious enough, implies that he fell from grace, which could mean Gege is opting to include that aspect of real Sukuna in his story's iteration of the figure. Sugawara was an avid poet. In fact, his poetry is what makes him one of the most popular figures of the Heian era, and one of his most famous poems was about a plum tree in his hometown, which at the time was known as Heian-kyo, the capital of Japan. Uraume, as Sukuna's most loyal servant during the Heian era, has a plum theme in their design, the kanji for plum appearing in their name as well as the deep red colour of their hair. More importantly though, Sukuna is bizarrely but incredibly knowledgeable about poems, which he displayed with his knowledge about haikus in his battle against Yorozu. Furthermore, Sukuna speaks very poetically, like the way he talks implies some kind of high-class background. He literally uses an idiom to tell Gojo he cleared his skies. Now, you could say that these are arbitrary similarities that you'll find between many prominent figures from the Heian era. People from the same time period will be similar. However, Gege having made it clear he aims to weave a tightly interconnected story through other details I've covered in my own videos, as well as the specifics of the parallels between Sukuna and Sugawara, lead me to believe this theory has a decent chance of being true. Not a massive chance, but a good one. Minor clues such as Ryomen Sukuna being a title rather than his actual name, which is something that Gege has pointedly made distinctions between in every other instance, coupled with Gege's obsession with cruel irony and cyclicality, makes a good case for Sukuna being Sugawara no Michizane, as that would mean everything has come full circle with the ancestor of the Gojo clan who had a feud with the Zenin clan, having attained the prized jewel of the Zenin for himself. There's my crackpot theory though. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you very much to Jallomoth for having me here.
Punishment CT. To be honest, by the time this series comes to an end, the Sukuna's curse technique Iceberg could have been made. Every day, dozens of people ponder and scheme about what Sukuna's true, real, full technique is. We've seen him use a lot of different skills and abilities, and the water has become muddied as to what is his true technique and what's some weird extension of it. I only read these if they're interesting, so is this one? Of course. As the title read, it's that Sukuna's technique is punishment itself. Shout out to the user _the_lonely_stoner for bringing this to my attention via his Reddit post. He posits that, hey, during the Edo period, some of the common ways to execute someone in a torturous manner, which was more common than you'd think, were slicing, i.e. dismemberment and decapitation, and burning with fire or scalding water. We know Sukuna is the Fallen, but what crime did he commit to be ostracized from God, Angel's group? Well, a surprising way to find out might be to look at Sukuna's tattoos. During the same Edo period, criminals were given tattoos to permanently mark their status as dangerous, on their arms if it was thievery, and on their face for murder. This makes an odd amount of sense, Sukuna having this technique of torture. His power set suddenly becomes anything torturous. He likes using tools, we all know he's a cannibal, so the other crimes all kind of pale in comparison too, so it's easy to see. But this paints us a picture, does it not? One of a Ryomen Sukuna weak enough to be held down and given these tattoos in the first place. Maybe he let it happen because he liked how fierce it made him, but I don't think so. We already know, directly from him, that he was an unwanted child. Now we get a picture of a sad, lonely young thief.
Alright, now it is time to touch upon the Heian twin princes theory. And I know Jallo has briefly touched upon some of these ideas before, but this is the full analysis and all of the evidence pertaining to it. Now, it's clear that Yuji and Sukuna are related for several reasons. First of all, they just look so similar. I know it's a very obvious reason, but when you actually compare them side by side of his father, his grandfather, Sukuna's true form, and Yuji themselves, they look oddly similar. Obviously excluding the deformed face and deformed body, just the hair, the structure, it's just very close, and it may be a coincidence, but perhaps Perhaps not, and I'll touch upon this soon. And the other reason is because Sukuna clearly recognizes Yuji, as he actually says that to Uruume and they laugh at Yuji, which does actually tie back to when Sukuna says, oh, Yuji is from that time. Now Viz incorrectly added their own dialogue which wasn't in the Japanese, and they straight up state that Sukuna's talking about the Harima statue, which again was never said in the Japanese, and when I actually spoke to people in the Japanese community and a Japanese translator, they were actually baffled that the Viz made this mistake, whereas us in the English community just talked that up to, oh, they were just making fun of him because he looks similar to the statue. In the Japanese community, that's not what they're doing at all, and because of that line from Sukuna, and especially that last one, they actually theorize with what Gege had actually written that Yuji is from the Heian era. And if you want my personal opinion, I think Gege was actually doing a double reference. There was a reference to the statue, but it's pretty clear, especially given his previous words where he says Yuji's from that time, that he's clearly referring to Yuji being someone that him and Uruume knew from the Heian era, especially when you actually take into consideration the actual Japanese text and what Gege himself wrote and what people in the Japanese communities are saying. It's clear that this is probably what he was gunning for. Now I won't get into whole Kenjaku messing with this specific bloodline because he knew it was related to Sukuna, because you've heard so many theories on that already. However, what I do want to touch upon is the fact that could it be possible that Yuji himself is a reincarnation, and it's a key distinction from an incarnation. He is a reincarnation of Sukuna's twin from the past. But what I specifically mean is a royal prince. And of course, if Yuji's royalty, then that would also mean Sukuna's royalty. The reason I say this is because there's several theories linking to several princes that were actually twins or just brothers that people actually theorize could have been Yuji and Sukuna back in the day. One of the theories stating that Yuji and Sukuna were actually the children of Emperor Chuai, with one of the sons being Kagosako no Miko and Oshikuma no Miko. The reason this is important is because one of the brothers actually has ties to the Hida provinces, and of course Sukuna is heavily linked to the Hida province, with that being a key piece of detail of his from the Nihon Shoki, which in case you aren't aware, Gege has actually based Sukuna off of mostly the Nihon Shoki Chronicles of Japan, and of course some of which from another manga, but that manga actually got it from Nihon Shoki as well. Now this is interesting because it was actually said in the Nihon Shoki that Emperor Chuai was killed by a vengeful spirit called Kami, which means God. Could it be that Sukuna was actually the one responsible for killing his father, and he was this vengeful spirit that's called God? At least that's what they may have thought he was. This is further backed up by the fact that the Yamato dynasty, which was actually a key figure during the Heian era, was a massive enemy of Sukuna's, with one of their generals, Take Furukuma no Mikoto, actually being the one that defeated Sukuna and drove him out of the Hida province, again in the Nihon Shoki Chronicles of Japan. It would make sense if Sukuna was actually a disgraced prince, and he was actually kicked out of the royal family, probably from birth or from a young age, because he was either A, deformed, or B, because he was a twin, since that's looked down upon as a bad omen in Jujutsu Kaisen, or maybe because he just did something insanely evil, such as either eating his own twin, which could have been Yuji at the time, killing his own twin, which could have also been Yuji, or even just killing his father. And to tie back to what I was talking about at the beginning, the reason that Yuji's father, grandfather, and himself look so similar to Sukuna themselves is they could actually be descendants of someone from that royal family. So they're not direct descendants of Sukuna, since Gege said Sukuna had no wife or children, but they could have actually been descendants from either Sukuna's twin, maybe Sukuna's brother or sister, or a cousin, or just any members of that royal family. But there are quite a lot of other theories tying into Sukuna and Yuji actually being either twin princes or brothers who were princes from the Heian era, and that was just one of many of them.
Gojo's body. We've talked about Gojo a lot today. If he survived, if he didn't, blah blah blah. Right now, for the sake of this topic, let's just say Gojo is 100% dead. He got sliced like an Italian sandwich, and his lifeless body is not going anywhere except the deli. Except in aerial shots of the battlefield just one chapter after Gojo's death, his corpse is nowhere to be seen. Gojo fought so hard to get Gojo a proper burial, and while he never got his wish, maybe he inadvertently cursed himself by wishing so hard for this. So what are the possibilities of where this corpse could have ended up? In my opinion, there are 4 ways this could go. 1. Kenjaku steals it. In my previous iceberg, I talked about who Kenjaku's next vessel could be, and for some reason I didn't even once bring up Gojo. Despite that, especially now, he's the most open target. Maybe before he got beheaded, heading to collect Gojo's corpse was a part of his plan, but I don't know. This would be way too risky of a place for Kenjaku to just show up out of the blue. 2. Sukuna eats it. I ate that thing. Sukuna has some kind of like weird homoerotic appreciation for Gojo's strength. And what form of flattery is there higher from a cannibal than being eaten by him and having your curse technique donated? Maybe this one is what happens and Sukuna has infinity while one of our heroes inherits the 6 eyes. Sukuna with infinity kind of sounds unbeatable though. 3. Yuta has Rika eat it. I ate that thing. Maybe Yuta is so butthurt about the 6 eyes going to somebody else that he runs out there and steals that technique a different way by consuming his body. Unlikely, but who knows at this point. And 4th, and most likely,
is that Gege will never mention it again. The Master Plan. The Master Plan is the simple notion that we haven't got the slightest idea as to what's going on in this brain's brain. Kenjaku is the mayor of Yap City, and has let his weird plan slip multiple times to multiple people. But I raise this question, one I think gets asked nowhere near enough. Why believe Kenjaku? Jujutsu Kaisen is all about characters' mindsets, their interpretations of the world around them. Our narrators aren't even reliable. We get characters bickering about how the soul works. They're trying to figure this stuff out just like we are, and probably Gege too. So really, why trust anything the Master Manipulator says? Kenjaku earlier said he sees nothing in Yuji and doesn't even care what happens to him. Yet we know this isn't true, and we even got him to say thank you for getting along with my son. Bullshit. I think his whole thing about how all he wants is chaos, and he's just curious to see what would happen, because maybe it'd be funny, is all a ploy. His moves are far too specific for just that. He is an evil scientist, so I do believe he is curious about this kind of thing. They're a very sick and twisted character, but I think that's all just a perk of the job. So what is his true master plan, his end goal? Well, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I think Kenjaku will betray Sukuna. I'm surprised it didn't happen yet, and I'm not sure how it'll go down, but what does Kenny want with him? I'm not sure. Perhaps Sukuna is even more special than we realize. Maybe it's not even Sukuna, but Yuji, or even Megumi that he's after. That Megumi callout sounds like an asspull, but I'm not so sure. Maybe Kenjaku and Sukuna's binding vow that we never found out the rules of was to spare Megumi. That's why Sukuna has always saved Megumi. Not only that, but this could be where Sukuna's fascination with this boy comes from, trying to figure out what Kenjaku wants with him. This could even be the reason Sukuna body hopped to Megumi at all, just to throw a wrench in Kenny's plan. Because really, you're lying to yourself if you think Sukuna hasn't already thought of Kenjaku trying to pull something. He's not the kind of guy to leave it up to chance. Is this all just to build Kenjaku the dream body to inhabit by forcing all these beings to clash until only the strongest is left to steal? I'm not quite sure, because some of the sorcerers of today are already more powerful than him. So what could he do when they're exponentially stronger? I don't know, but this one gives me the creeps. Kenjaku could want anything. The merger, to exterminate all life, to merge humans and curses entirely, to be the ruler of everything, any number of things. Or yes, maybe he's just telling the truth. Maybe he really is just as curious as me. Megumi's fate. In the beginning of this video, we talked about how Maharaga's fate is obviously ambiguous because Megumi's is too. Well, Fushiguro here has a lot more to discuss than a simple wheel. We could bicker back and forth about the narrative and story reasons for Megumi to come back, but let's try to focus on how such an insane feat could ever be attempted. We just discussed in the previous entry that maybe it's Kenny all along who's been obsessed with Megumi. Will Megumi end JJK with stitches on his head? Maybe. Perhaps Megumi is already dead, never to return again. This really gets anomalous when we think about what Sukuna just pulled. He just summoned his original form, something he could apparently have done this whole time. Why did he wait? Who knows, but maybe doing this completely fizzled Megumi's body away. Maybe there's nothing in there except Sukuna and his cannibalistic stomach. But he does say something to Kashimo about only being able to enter this form once. Does he only have one Chuck E. Cheese token left? Why is this something he only has one chance to do? Will his body dissipate if he ever tries to switch back like Hajime and Phantom Beast Amber? If that's the case, then Megumi's probably gone. Or if they defeat Sukuna, he'll just be there lying on the ground. Just never forget what Megumi said to Yuji. Start by saving me. Could it be possible to split the two apart? Well, Maki has a soul splitter blade, but this would most likely just cut right through both of them, not separate them. One of my favorite ideas is divorce.
Stop laughing.
Higuruma and Yuji just pounced on Sukuna at this point in the manga. How do these two plan to survive? No clue, but it's a given Higuruma will expand his domain. Sukuna's having fun, so he'll play along. Maybe he'll even get a sense of what's going on and try to get the death penalty just for the hell of it. But what if Higuruma isn't trying Sukuna for murder? What if he's Megumi's divorce lawyer? If you think that's too goofy, look no further than Takaba vs Kenjaku. This is possible. I would personally really like this. It would add to the importance of Higuruma like no other. This could be a fitting way to reunite Megumi with his friends in the fight against this megalomaniac, and while I do think it is a bit strange, I love it. It would be unique and fun and make sense. There's gotta be at least 10 other theories I could cover about splitting these two. But if I take the time to cover them all, this will be outdated by the time it drops. We making this one quick, the bills are due, people. You wouldn't want to see a moth when the lamp goes out. The end of the cycle. For our last entry, I want to talk about something looming over every moment in this series. Something constantly there, ever present, but rarely mentioned. This would be the cycle of curses. As generations of humans pass and emotions shift, there's a legitimate cycle of cursed energy. Like the water cycle in real life, it's just a natural effect of the world this story takes place in. But Kenjaku and Yuki, both genius scheming bastards, wanted to attempt to break this cycle, ending it for good. Both in their own way, yes, but their goal really was shared in that instance. I think something different from both of these two though. I think the cycle is already as good as over. Think about it. Fate was set in JJK. The higher-ups maintained order, the clans kept each other in check, the star plasma vessel kept Tengen alive, the disaster curses were killed and then reincarnated a few generations later, likely dozens of times, the Six Eyes passed from user to user, everything was in its place. But then, one smelly man, one broke freak, shattered all of that. Now, Tengen is gone. The star plasma vessels are dead, so are the higher-ups. I think Toji really did destroy fate, and potentially with it, opened up the inevitability that is the end of the cycle. Who knows how it'll end? Maybe with the merger. Maybe there will be no more curses at all. Maybe the humans lose, I'm not sure. All I know is that this normal, cyclical state of the Jujutsu world is done. I wouldn't be surprised if Jogo and Mahito and the rest never reincarnate, if the Six Eyes never get passed on again. I suppose we'll just have to wait for the end of Jujutsu Kaisen. Earlier today, when this all began, I remembered what I said the last time we were here, that I need to do another one of these when this series concludes. And yeah, that's still true. To be fair, these are my only videos that really make any money, so depending on how long JJK takes to finish, you may even get another one out of me. Really, I have a lot of cool videos I want to do about JJK, but just can't do until the thing ends, so subscribe because you're getting more content about it regardless. Just eventually, you know? Who knows what I'll post next? I mean, look at my track record so far. I like being unpredictable. YouTube doesn't appreciate it as much as I do. Either way, the pleasure is all mine. I love making videos and refuse not to thrive, even if the landscape gets a little harsh. For you, who pulled up a chair and decided to stay and hear me talk for all this time, I'm truly grateful. Thank you for your support. Thank you genuinely for coming. Do come again soon, and as always, stay curious.
You are my special.